Alright, hello, good day, and welcome. My name is Mr. JB, and today we're going through another Photopea tutorial. This one came as a request. This is for creating the glowing style thumbnail that you'll see many YouTubers do. I just start off with a width of 1920 and a height of 1080 because that is our thumbnail size when we are talking about stuff in Photopea. I'm going to click create. And now I end up having my white image. Now I'm going to end up dragging in my picture of Chris Hemsworth. Sometimes it ends up dragging in two, don't matter. And I'm going to remove the background. To do that, I'm going to select the select button in the top and I'm going to click remove BG. Now this can sometimes take a moment, depending on how many times you've done it. You need to watch an ad. If not, it'll be super quick. I got to watch an ad. I will see you all in a second. Lovely. So my stuff is now all done. I'm going to end up dropping in my picture of Chris Hemsworth and kind of moving it around to be where I want it to be. Now, usually when you see these thumbnails, they usually have a person over to the right, so that's where I'm going to aim to place my person. Once I have him here, I'm going to lock him so that way I can't alter or mess him up. And I am going to end up creating a new layer, but I'm going to select it as black. So that's the half and half symbol, the half moon, and you're going to drag it down to select a black layer. And you're going to drag it just below your image, whoever your person is. Now I am going to make two more layers with my color fill. And I'm going to select the two colors that I want this to be. So one of them is going to be pink. And my other one is going to be some form of a blue. As you can tell in my thumbnail, it's some form of a blue. So boom, I'm going to select that blue. Lovely. Now, obviously this isn't where we want to have it, so with the white box selected, you're going to do Control I, and that's going to turn them black. That means when I go to paint on these in a second, it's going to actually paint what I want it to. Now I'm going to select my color over here in the bottom left as white. I'm going to select my black box, and I'm going to select a brush tool. I'm going to go up here to the top and select soft round. Increase my size. For me, somewhere around 1400 I find works great for this. Now, I'm going to end up doing pink on the left side, so just a little bit around the ear, you can see kind of where my circle is placed. Click, and I've got that one in, and I'm going to do the same thing to the right side. Again, something along the same dealio. With those three colors selected, I'm going to go back to my select tool, and I'm going to group them all, so that way I don't touch them, I don't play with them again. I'm going to select all three by clicking the top one, holding shift and selecting the bottom one, and then pressing Control G. That will group them all together. My picture of Chris Hemsworth, I'm going to make 3 duplicate layers, and then I'm going to make 3 just nothing layers. So you see here it says new layer beside the garbage can. I'm going to create 3 layers of that for the time being. We will need to make more later, but this is where we're going to start. For each one of these layers, we're going to add a raster mask, so that's the one that kind of looks like a camera. Select each one of these layers, make that, and then we're going to drag in our kind of transparent-y space of Chris Hemsworth. That is kind of like our cutout layer. There's ways to do this that aren't this, but I just find this way fast. Now, I'm going to select my layers, and I'm going to name them the color that they are going to be. Perfect. Now, with my blue layer, I'm going to end up selecting my brush tool. I'm going to end up selecting my soft round, and probably somewhere on the 90 to 100 mark. I'm going to select my color. I'm going to go back to my blue. Select my blue again, somewhere around there, I think it was. Select OK, and now I'm going to end up drawing on the right side just where I think the blue glow is going to be placed. Now this isn't going to be perfect, that's not what the goal is. Our goal is just to do some coverage. We'll do those adjustments in those pieces later. Now it looks like absolute garbage because it kind of is right now, but the reason we did these layers is because, as you can see, I'm not getting any bleed out, which means I don't have any extra things that I need to fight with in terms of color. I'm going to select my pink. I'm going to do the exact same thing. You do want to make sure that your color goes pretty far across the top of your person. You want to make sure to get their ears, cover it, make sure that you get some of their jawline. If you notice any spots on their hair that has any bright highlights, that's probably where you want to consider throwing on your color. Now with those there, this obviously looks like garbage, so we are going to click our drop down menu and we are going to set these both to screen, and they already look so much better. They still look not good, but it looks a lot better. We're going to select our eraser tool, and we are going to go to soft round again, and we're going to select somewhere around the 70 to 80 size. On here, we're just doing this so that way we can make the edges not quite as harsh. If you need to zoom in to see what you're doing, make sure that you do, because this is the stuff that you need to make sure looks good. Otherwise, your whole piece kind of looks garbagey. So I'm just going to do that. You can watch. I'm going to do a quick time lapse, and I will see you all in a second. Perfect. So I've dropped in my pink, I've dropped in my blue, I've kind of, as you can see, I've done that erasing just to kind of make it so that way it's where I want it to be. Now, personal preference, you can spend a lot of time on this and make it look perfect. I'm just doing this as a quick tutorial, so I'm not going to be spending an hour or 40 minutes doing this. I'm just going to end up doing it rather quickly. So now I'm going to end up selecting my brush tool. I'm going to end up selecting my soft round, probably somewhere around the 12-ish mark. I'm going to zoom in. Oh, a little bit too much. And I'm going to end up starting to do some of these highlights. Now, if your image, the 12, doesn't end up looking like it's the right size for whatever reason, that's totally cool. Just end up selecting a size that does work for you. Again, you want to be able to see the white through this, but you don't want it to be massive and looking super chunky. 20 looks like that'll work good for at least a few spots. You might have to adjust it randomly depending on where you are in terms of your image. Now I'm going to select my color as being white, so that's important here, and I'm just going to end up drawing across, and I'm going to end up drawing my white for my pieces of my highlights. Now, you don't want to cover every spot that's going to be highlighted. You want to end up leaving a little bit of space, because we are going to be going through and we are going to be dragging it across with the smudge tool, so it doesn't need to be perfect in this moment. Just think about doing some coverage. The ears, I like to drop that size a little bit smaller. I find that the ears, you really want them to look good. Otherwise, it can make your whole piece kind of look off. So just make sure that you're getting those pieces, you're getting the ears, you're getting what you need to, but you're still giving yourself some of that space and some of that grace to end up dragging out with your smudge tool in just a second. Perfect. And you really want to make sure that you cover the entire upper portions of the hair. And if you notice any spots with some intense highlights, you want to make sure that you cover them with a little bit more of the white, and that just helps them to pop a little bit as you're going through and you're creating these glowing effects. Perfect. So now I'm going to end up selecting my smudge tool. Now, and that is just down here on the left, just below my gradient. If it doesn't show up for you, right click and you will see it. It's the bottom option. You're going to select up here the stylus pressure control size, and that's going to end up allowing us to get a little bit more of these angled pieces coming out as we're kind of doing these dragging. You can see it kind of fades to a bit of more of a taper, and that's gonna just make things look a little bit nicer, especially when we're talking about some of the highlights here on these ears. Perfect. So I've done my colors, I've done my highlights. Now it doesn't look amazing. Again, there's still more to do, but with that, we are going to end up going on to our next stage and our next bunch of steps. Now, with our next stage, we're going to create a new layer. We're going to select that new layer button. We get real friendly with that during this tutorial. We're going to select our brush tool, and we are going to select our two colors. Now, we're going to select our blue to start. We're going to end up taking our brush tool, making it a little bit larger, and we're just going to create a little bit of a glow on the outside of our person. Now, this doesn't need to be perfect. We just want to end up creating something so that way it looks like there's a little bit of like a radiating color from them. Again, it looks really crappy right now because it will. And now we are going to end up doing our left side, doing our pink. With those both done, we are going to end up dropping down and we are going to select that to our screen. And you can see we've got a little bit more of that glow. If that's a little bit too intense, then you can always end up changing your opacity by dropping that down a little bit, creates it a little bit less, and you can drop your fill down a little bit, and again, that will also help to kind of lessen that, make that a little bit less intense, but I do like a little bit of the outside emanating glow. Now we're going to create our new layer. Again, we got a couple more of these we're going to select our color to be white, and we are going to select our drop down menu, and we're going to make this size fairly big, somewhere probably around the 700 to 800-ish mark. And you're going to click somewhere around the chest of your person. You can click a couple times to get that glow a little bit bigger, just to be a little bit more glowing, show a little bit more brightness as it's popping up behind your person. With that, we're going to select screen again. It's not going to really matter all that much, but we do want to make sure that it is behind your person. Any other layer or spot will look really weird, a little funky. With that, we are going to end up doing a little bit more color change. We're going to add a couple more things. We're going to create one more new layer. This should be our last new layer. And we are going to end up choosing our colors again. I'm going to select our pink. We're going to leave it around the size that we had it before. We're going to click a couple spots just so that way we can get a little bit of that pink glowing a little bit more on the outside. And we're going to select our blue. And again, a little bit more glowing as though it's kind of coming from behind our person. And if we want to change our stuff to screen again, you'll notice it changes our colors a little bit. You can try lighten, you can go through these. I personally have found that screen looks the best. We are now going to change our opacity a little bit just to change a little bit more of that. Gives us a couple different tiers of that glow from that other one that we added a moment ago. And we're going to end up dropping down our layer fill a little bit. Now, we're going to zoom out and just have a quick look. If you look at that and you think, this looks awesome, this looks great, perfect, we're near completion. We just like to add a few more little sprinkles to make it pop and give it a little more pizzazz. To do that, I am now going to end up dropping in my pixels. Drop that in. It's going to take a second to load. When I do, it's going to just drop it wherever. Now, obviously, this isn't where I want to end up having this placed. We're going to drop this down just above our folder 1. We're going to change that to be screen. Now, there we've got our colors, we've got our things, we've got our glow, we've got all that stuff. If this looks too intense for you, you can always drop it down so that way they're a little bit more quiet instead of being as bright as they are. I'm going to drop it down a little bit just for the sake of doing it. Now, if you're happy, you throw your text on, you do your things, great. I like to add a bit more into my thumbnails, and to do that, I just create a rectangle box in the corner. From corner to corner, it fills the space. I'm going to select my fill and shut it off, and I'm going to select my stroke and turn it on and change it to white because that's just the color I'm going to be using for this thumbnail. I'm going to change my size to be somewhere around, I think, 20 to 30-ish mark. Yeah, that looks good. Click enter, drop that in, and I'm going to drag it all the way to the top. I'm going to create a duplicate layer. With my bottom layer, I'm going to right click and rasterize. I'm going to go to filter, blur, and Gaussian blur. I'm going to drag that out a little bit just so that way I create a little bit of a white emanating glow from the outside. From here, I'm going to drop in my texts. I'm going to create my size, make my size as large as possible, make my color white. Now, this obviously looks terrible. This is robbing from the quality of what my image is. So I'm going to change my leading, which means that I'm basically just changing the size in between the spaces. So that way it just looks a little bit closer. That way there's a little bit of a small gap in between. And if you want to change certain colors, certain pieces, you're going to end up selecting your color, doing whatever it is that you want to do with that. And now I've got just those few pieces are all situated and all set up. If you want to change individual sizes for your font, so that way I wanted one word to be brighter than the other. If you're doing this for your thumbnail design, you just drag it in and you just end up adjusting your sizes. So I do, let's say 380. Now that one's a little bit bigger. You need to adjust your leading in between these two lines now because they're touching. And maybe I need a little bit more just to make sure that's even. Bam. And now I've got my stuff. My font's not the greatest because it can get a little bit lost in there. So I like to go to my effects, go to stroke, and adjust my size to be, let's just say 8. Click OK. Now I drop in whatever my logo is, and I drop in all my things, and I'm done. Now with that, this tutorial can be pretty lengthy, but once you get the hang of it, it's pretty quick in terms of running through it. I have seen some pretty overcomplicated ways of people doing this with different blend options and all sorts of things, and I just find you can get the same results with about a quarter of the time, or near results with about a quarter of the time, and this is how I do that within Photopea. If you have any suggestions on things that you'd like to see, please drop them in the comments below. As always, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed and I hope you learned something. Have a wonderful day, take care, and be safe.